This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by Maximus. On this edition of Fed Gov Today, keeping the FAR overhaul momentum going as one of its leaders leaves government.
I do hope the Trump administration finds someone who wants to continue to push the elements of the revolutionary FAR overhaul.
Former OFPP Administrator Joe Jordan on Fed Gov Today in just a moment. Uniting program strategy, advanced technology, process, and execution for a more efficient government. That's Maximus. Every program, every service, every time. That's innovation forward. Learn more at maximus.com/federal. One of the architects of the revolutionary FAR overhaul is stepping down. Kevin Rhodes is leaving as Administrator of Federal Procurement Policy September 4th. Joe Jordan's President and CEO of Actiparo. He's former Administrator of Federal Procurement Policy. Joe, welcome. It's great to talk to you again. What are the steps that people like Kevin take to effectively institutionalize the work that they've done in government as they're about to leave government? Welcome, Joe.
Oh, thanks, Francis. Thanks for having me. There are a couple things, and frankly, Dr. Rhodes is ahead of the game on some of the biggest pieces of it, which is how do you get the policies and priorities that you're trying to push or you've been trying to push codified in regulation and agency practice and things like that. And when you talk about the revolutionary FAR overhaul, that's already happening. And some of the consolidated buying and contract consolidation at the General Services Administration, same thing. So, that's a huge part of it. The second piece, which I'm not as clear on, which is actually the half that I was fortunate enough to benefit from, is having a successor who shares a lot of your perspective on the important work that office can get done. And in my case, someone who is better, smarter, and more well-liked, and so therefore can be even more effective in implementing and expanding your priorities. And so, that'll be the second piece for Kevin and the OFPP team, is, who's next? And the last wrinkle there is, for the longest time in that particular office, it was always Leslie Field, the deputy, who would for months or years fill that role of ensuring continuity and injecting her own, intellect, skills, and experience into ensuring success for various initiatives. And Matthew's awesome. Joni's awesome. They've still got an awesome team, but it will definitionally not be her since she's not in government anymore. So that'll be interesting as well.
You sell yourself short because you accomplished a lot in office, and running your successor, who you alluded to a moment ago, did as well. The challenge that strikes me for that office is it has to have somebody, because Kevin was the first OFPP administrator, Senate confirmed for, 9 years or something like that, I think I read.
Yeah, I think Michael Wooten was probably the last one during Trump one. Unfortunately, the Biden administration never got a nominee through confirmation. And so you're absolutely right. And I do think it can be important. I don't want to seem self-serving. It seems a little self-aggrandizing, talk about the importance of your having a political appointee in the old job you were appointed to.
Right.
But I will just say that one of the things that was helpful was, as a political appointee and definitionally someone whose time would come to an end far beyond the career span of a senior career official, when I was asked to do things I didn't think were great ideas, I was very comfortable, raising those objections, and not in an obstructionist way, but in a, hey, I know what we're trying to achieve together. Here are some alternative solutions. And, then going out inside the White House, selling those, and then outside with stakeholders. And it's not fair to ask even a very senior, long tenured career civil servant to play those roles and put themselves out on a limb like that. And so, I do hope the Trump administration finds someone who wants to continue to push the elements of the revolutionary FAR overhaul and other policies that I think are good. There are a bunch I don't like, but I give them credit for a move fast and break things sort of approach versus the classic take forever to discuss. It'll be interesting to see if and whom they find next to fill this role.
It strikes me, too, is it possible one of the reasons that the FAR overhaul has proceeded with the speed that it has and with the overall, I would say, positive reviews from both government and industry that it has, because they parceled out the work. Bunch of it happened at OFPP, bunch of it happened at OGP at GSA, bunch of it happened at NASA, the Pentagon too, all across the FAR Council. Everybody was involved instead of a bunch of it being dumped on, on one or two organizations.
Yeah, I believe that. Sure. I think a lot of the natural order of things was smaller group develops a bunch of regulatory reforms. You discuss it with the FAR Council, which is not a large and broad body. Then you move out to the community and you take a year, maybe a year and a half to do the regulatory reviews and discussions. And you implement it. They said, no, we're gonna put these things out, and then we invite you to comment on them. And while there are challenges to that, and it does leave you vulnerable to implementing your mistakes before you find out they are mistaken, there's a lot of benefits too. So, I think that is by broadening the number of key policy developers, not just implementers, and then kind of saying, okay, yep, this looks good. It is the rule of the land right now. Feel free to comment on why it should not be. That was a strong 1-2 punch when you're trying to change things quickly.
Well, we wish Kevin Rhodes well, and my only regret about his tenure is that I didn't get a chance to talk to him as OFPP Administrator. Before we went on the air, you told me that there's something sneaking up on people potentially in the GovCon world right now, and that is proposed small business size standards that Small Business Administration dropped this week. What do you see there that's potentially an issue for folks, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in my acquisition role at SBA, I always joked with my friends who were outside government of all the things I thought would be at the top of the list of what I would hear about from business owners and small business folks in the public. Size standards and NAICS codes was not on that list. And yet that was the number one thing people would talk about. The definitional amount of revenue that a company makes or employees that it has that dictates whether or not it is or is not a small business. And in government, there are no mid-sized businesses. You're small or other than small. So that size threshold is really important. And, you usually see it in the 20 to maybe $50 million range. If you're doing programming, IT, custom computer services, that's like 34 million. If you're doing consulting, like my business does now, it's a little under 25 million. That's how much revenue you can make in a year and be considered a small business. And to a lot of new businesses, hey, that seems like a big business, right? You're just starting a consulting firm, 25 million a year. Wow, I have to compete against them. Well, the proposed size standards raise for that kind of administrative general management consulting services, the size standard from $24.5 million to $295 million. So that's it's per year, trailing over the last 5 years. So you could have made $600 million last year for your consulting firm. You're still a small business, depending on how the prior years went. And for those custom programming services, from $34 million to $531 million per year. Those are insane, Francis. So what they're going to say is, hey, these help us achieve our goals and offer the small business lending provisions to more companies. Well, sure, that's just because you changed the game. Is there a single listener to your great podcast who would say that a $531 million business is small? Please introduce them to me, because I've not met one who would think that is remotely reasonable. And it just seems like a total handout to large business and a further denigration of these great programs. So it's something that it may fly under the radar with certain folks in this community, but I would strongly urge them to look at that and comment if they feel moved to.
That's what I was going to ask you next. Is it in comment period now? What's the timeline of something like that?
I think the comments will be due. I think the date was September 19th. So yeah, it's the proposed rule was published, and you have a 30-day comment period. And so I would recommend anybody just Google SBA proposed size standards, and I'm sure you'll find the link to submit your comments. And if you think $500 million or $750 million company is a small business, then God bless. But I don't think that's the spirit of these programs.
We'll put a link to the comments in the show notes today at fedgovtoday.com. How does something like that work? Comments come back, the SBA analyzes them, then what happens internally after that, Joe?
Yeah, so it's different by individual set of leaders or administration. But what we would do is when I was at SBA and same at OFPP, when we do regulatory reviews, we would read every single comment. Some are more detailed and substantive than others. So some were definitely
short
colorful,
but sweet.
And others were data-driven insights. And so we'd read them all, and some things were just clearly obvious changes were needed. And so you get with the lawyers like, hey, we didn't realize that. And so you'd make a change. It might be something simple, like you can't say shall, you have to say may, or this happens. Or it might be something real where you didn't see an unintended consequence of your policy. And then there were others that, required a lot of discussion, debate, because there were both sides. And that happens a lot, especially with things like size standards, where a tiny business wants the size standard to be as small as possible, and an emerging large business wants it to increase as much as possible. And so there's natural, perfectly fair tension, and you'd have discussions. And then what we would do with these big regulatory reviews is we'd go out on the road, go to where the businesses and business owners were, and do a listening tour to get additional comment and conversation in person before we finalize the regulations. So hopefully that's how SBA does it. There have been some concerning things out of that agency, and specifically in the government contracting side, over the last year and a half. So I'm not clear that they are listening or whether all these comments go to the proverbial shredder, but I certainly hope so, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on this one.
All right. Final thought. Are you cautiously optimistic about the New England Patriots schedule this year, or are you just already completely over the moon on this Super Bowl bound bandwagon?
I feel like the Pats and Pats fans are playing with a bit of house money, having made the Super Bowl so ahead of schedule. Unfortunately, given the whooping they took, I would like to see a good season this year. So cautious optimism is exactly what I would say. Okay. It's a thin team. That's why none of the starters have played in the 2 preseason games so far. But with Drake May, anything is possible. So I am excited and can't wait to tune in.
All right. Thank you, my friend. It's always great to catch up with you. Appreciate your time today.
Very fun, Francis. Thanks for having me.
You can read more on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. The next Fed Gov Today podcast comes Thursday. I'm Francis Rose. I'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening.